This is we are learning chapter 2, that is business analysis key concept, and this is chapter 2 in BABOK guide version number 3 from IIBA. So let's basically go through that. This particular slide will this and the following slide will talk about the overview of the chapter. Okay, if you see this business analysis concept, the chapter will include the information that provides a foundation for all the content, concept, and the ideas mentioned within the BABOK guide. It provides business analysis with basic understanding of central idea and necessary for understanding and employing the BABOK guide in the daily practice of business analysis. So there are many concepts I've used here, and we will be they may be new to you during our learning. So most of the concept basically we have taken here as a key concept on either under the core concept or key terms or requirement classification. So they have been covered here. So the first basically part focuses on business analysis core concept model. This is a new in the BABOK version number 3. Earlier it was not there in the previous version. So this is basically newly introduced. It talks about, it defines the conceptual framework for the BA business analysis profession. So we will go through that in detail. There are basically 6 concepts they have mentioned, and how we basically use them in a different context, because when the different activities or different phase is there, and we use and apply that knowledge in a different way. So that is what is all about the concept. So we will just go through them in detail. And in terms of the key terms provides definition of essential concept which are highlighted because their importance to the BABOK guide. Then we have is a requirement classification schema. Requirement classification schema basically will identify the level or the types of requirement that assist the business analyst and other stakeholders in categorizing the requirement. So the requirements are basically categorized in high level to the detail level. For example, there's a business requirement, then your stakeholder requirements, and solution requirement. Within the solution, there is a functional requirement, non-functional requirement, and then the transition requirement. Okay, so we'll address them as well. Then the key point here is key concept is stakeholders. Now when it comes to the stakeholders, the stakeholder means any person who has a stake in a particular activity or in the project or particular part of the project. Okay, so we will basically address this concept, and we'll define the roles and the characteristic of the group or an individual participating in or who are affected by the business analysis activities within the change. So we will see what are the different types of role could be there, and what are the definitions. Then we have is a requirement and design. This requirement and design basically describes the distinction between the importance of requirement and design as they relate to business analysis. Okay, so these are the concept we will be learning in this chapter. Let's basically start with the first one. This is the first is a core concept model. Now core concept model is basically, it is a conceptual framework for business analysis. This encompasses 6 concepts basically, which is mentioned here are the change, need, solution, stakeholder, value, context. Okay, and they are basically, what it means is those performing business analysis task regardless of a perspective, industry, methodology, or the level of organization. So this can be used in appropriate context. It is composed of the 6 terms that have a common meaning to all the business analysts, that help them to discuss both business analysis and its relationship with common terminology. Okay, and these are basically can be used to describe the professional and domain business analysis. This can be used to communicate about the business analysis within with the common terminology, and this can be basically used to evaluate the relationship of key concept in business analysis, and this is also can be used to perform better business analysis by holistically evaluating the relationship among these 6 concepts. So we will be basically addressing the key concept model during every knowledge area. Okay, for example, planning, elicitation and collaboration, requirement management, and strategy analysis, so and so forth. So everywhere we will be using this core concept. Then this can be used to evaluate the impact of this concept and relationship at any point during a work effort in order to establish both foundation and path forward. Okay, so this is the broad idea about the core concept. Let's basically understand what do they mean, each of this core concept. The first core concept is your change. Change means the act of transformation in response to a need. So we are implementing a change, means we transform something, either the process, or we implement a new technology or part of the operations, or could be entire process, operations like that. Okay, or we implement the infrastructure change, so and so forth. Okay, then change works to improve the performance of an enterprise. Okay, these improvements are deliberate, controlled through BA activities. Now, remember, this part is basically change is for improving the performance of an enterprise, but it could be for different reason as well. Change may be for regulatory purpose. Change may be there is a business need is there. It not necessarily just improving the performance of the enterprise. It could be for various reason you may have to implement a change. Okay. These improvements are deliberate and controlled. I would say improvement rather a change. The change are deliberate and controlled through business analysis activities and project management method framework. Okay. Okay. Now next is basically need. Now we have already covered this part. What is need? Business. This is actually business need. So business need is a problem or an opportunity to be addressed. So need can be a cause changes by motivating stakeholders to act, or changes can also cause the needs by eroding or enhancing the value delivered by existing solution. That's true. Sometimes it may not again enhance the value, it may erode. But then that could be because it fits into the strategic goal of the organization, or it could be required by the regulators, something. Okay, so that could be also the case. The regulatory requirement, yes, you may consider that this is eroding the value, but that may be required in order to do the business. If you can't do the business, then there is no, or everything is gone, right? We cannot even think about profit or loss when there is no business. But at least you reduce the value is okay. Decreasing the value is could be less important compared to having the business itself, right? Okay, surviving is more important. Next, we talk about a solution. A solution is a specific way of satisfying one or more needs in a context. Again, we remember the solution when we talk about it is one or more needs. It could be one software, one tool you are implementing. It could be part of the database, or you could be changing the operating model, or it could be very many other things, right? So that's, you are talking about the solution, one or more needs. It may take care of that. For example, when we talked about banking solution, what are the needs it is taking care of? That we have seen the 4 needs. Like, it allows a customer to log in, it allows a customer to transfer the fund, it allows a customer to view the statement or download the statement. So there could be various ways you may find is a needs are there, right? Yeah. Question. So it will also help you to basically enable the stakeholders to take advantage of an opportunity. Like, sometimes there could be a problem, so you want to solve the problem, but there could be an opportunity, so you need to basically take care of the opportunity. Then you're talking about the stakeholder, a group or individual with the relationship to the change, the need, or the solution. So the stakeholder could be a person, it could be individual, or it could be a group of people, right, or it could be a whole division. So it depends on the situation. Stakeholders are often defined in terms of the interest in, or somebody is interested in, or somebody are impacted by solution, or somebody may have an influence over the change. So these are the various ways we need to interact with them. Okay. Okay, now next is basically we're talking about is value. The next concept is value. Means the worth, importance, or usefulness of something to the stakeholders within a context. Okay, so value could be a potential value, or it is a realized return, or it could be gain or improvements. It is also possible to have a decrease in the value in the form of loss, risk, or cost. That could be possible. Okay, and value can be tangible or intangible. Tangible value can be directly measurable. Tangible value often has a significant monetary component. Intangible value is measured indirectly, like a brand value, customer, the employee moral, like that. Okay, so that is the intangible value that has significant motivational component, such as company's reputation, employee morale. Okay, in some cases, value is can be assessed in absolute terms, but in many cases it is assessed in a relative terms. One solution option is more valuable than another from the perspective of a given set of stakeholders. Now again, if a particular solution is more suitable to a particular group of a stakeholder, but it may not be suitable to the another group. So again, the person whom it is group of people whom it is more suitable, they may value it more, right? That way. In terms of the context, basically, it is the next point is circumstances that influence or are influenced by the influenced by and provide understanding of the change. So the context will provide you the additional information about what is been influenced, what is and again it will also provide you the understanding. For example, context is everything relevant to the change within the environment. The context may also include attitude, it could include a behavior, a belief, competitors, culture, demographies, industry, goals, government, infrastructure, language, losses, processes, products, projects, sales, seasons, terminology, technology, weather, and any other element meeting the definition. Okay. So these are the core concept, and here is a diagram. Let me just increase this bit. Okay, so diagram basically shows about this core concept here: change, needs, solution, stakeholders, context, and value. So they're all interlinked actually. If you see, the change is connected to the need, change is also connected to the stakeholder, change is connected to the value, change is connected to the context, change is also connected to the solution. Similar way, other all the concepts are connected with each other. So that is basically, it is how we it shows that they're all interconnected. Okay, so this is how we had to address every knowledge area from different context or different concept. Okay, at the beginning of the chapter. Now this is basically another. Okay, sorry, this is something wrong. These are your key concept actually. Let me just reduce the. Okay, so these are your key concept mentioned here. Okay, so we have already studied what is business analysis. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the business analysis information. Business analysis information is basically, it refers to a set of a broad and diverse set of information that business analysis will analyze, or he or she may transform or report. It is information of any kind or at any level of details. It could be metrics, it could be report, it could be a formal template, right? It could be models, it could be, for example, requirement, design, solution options, solution scope, strategy change, change strategy, elicitation result, and so on. Okay. But again, the next point we're talking about is a design. Design is basically usable representation of a solution. So design focuses on understanding of how value might be realized by a solution if it is built. The nature of representation may be document depending on the circumstances. Okay. In terms of the enterprise is a basically collection of different organizations. So they may have a broad basically philosophy or principles, and those are basically the philosophies, mission, goals are basically again replicated in every organization. For example, Tata Enterprise, that is enterprise, but within that the what we call Tata Chemicals, Tata Motors, and TCS, that is Tata Consulting Services. These are all your organizations. And organizations, yes, the organizations have individual objectives, goal, and individual basically culture. But the enterprise may have a philosophy. So the entire enterprise or the group of companies follow that philosophy. Okay. Then you may come as a plan. What do you mean by plan? A plan is a proposal for doing or achieving something. So it could be a sequence of action or events, and those sequence could be in a predetermined the or expected sequence, and also the result or outcome may be known. The material and the resources needed and the stakeholders involved are also maybe known. Okay. So that's what we plan. If you want to plan, project planning means, if you see, it involves scheduling, that is we know exactly when which activity has to be done, right? Like that scheduling. Then we may have to know the resource planning, and then actual work, the work breakdown structure, like that. Okay. Then you have is a requirement. A requirement is a usable representation of a need. Requirements focus on understanding what kind of a value could be delivered. If a requirement is fulfilled, so you'll have to check what value it will deliver. Those requirement could be individual or a group of requirement. The nature of representation may be document, or it could be depending on the circumstances. It could be part of your the requirement catalog, or it could be a template for the requirement, or you may call it as a the business requirement, or you may call it as a functional requirement document, like that. And the last concept here mentioned is a risk. Basically, risk is affected of uncertainty of the value of a change, a solution, or enterprise. Business analysts collaborate with other stakeholders to identify, assess, and prioritize the risk, and then deal with those risks by altering the conditions or addressing those risks by mitigating, seeing that what are the options are there to mitigate them or avoid them or basically replace them. So you can use various strategies to address the risk. Okay, so this is basically understanding of the key concept. Question? Okay, now I'm going to basically go to the next part. It talks about the requirement classification schema. The requirement classification schema, it talks about the requirement schema, and this will, let's basically understand What do you mean by business requirement? Business requirements are basically statement of goals, objectives, and outcome that will describe why change has been initiated. Okay, and they can also apply to the whole of an enterprise, or it could be applied to a business area, or could be a specific initiative. That's your business requirement. Now, stakeholder requirement, that will describe the needs of the stakeholder that must be met in order to achieve the business requirement. So, for example, um, fund transfer. So, the organization decides to provide the online fund transfer facility to the customer. So, that's the basically business requirement coming from the management. But then, stakeholder requirement could be the operation person may want this has to be done in a very secured way, right? Or he or she may want to say then the marketing team or the customer service department may say we want the at least 20,000 customers should be able to transfer the fund at any given time. So that's their specification. A regulatory person may come and give the requirement. Okay, if you are allowing the customer to transfer the fund online, so please ensure that they cannot transfer more than maybe 2 lakhs at any given time, right? So that's the requirement. So when you build that requirement, so build the if you want to build a requirement or the solution and incorporate that requirement, you have to ensure that or you have to consider all these stakeholders needs while basically defining that particular requirement. So fund transfer is just not a fund transfer as a you have the requirement at a high level, but how the requirement should be implemented, so this is all the stakeholders will provide their what we call inputs, and then talk about it, what are their needs, and also the what conditions the particular requirement must fulfill before it is implemented in the user environment. Question? Okay. Now we will talk about the stakeholders. We'll talk about the solution requirement. Now think about what is solution requirement you are talking about. See, we have defined the business requirement. We have also defined the stakeholder requirement. Now we have to define the solution requirement. Solution requirement means the requirement you have defined, but when you implement them, what solution should do? You got my point. So we had to say what solution we what solution should do. So when you say fund transfer, right, so that solution should have some capabilities in order to take care of the needs, right, or take care of that particular requirement or implement it well. Okay, so so we what here functional requirement is basically we describe about the functionality. For example, fund transfer is a functionality. So how the fund should be transferred, we need to understand and basically provide the details. That is your functional requirement, and that's basically capabilities. But when you talk about the non-functional requirement, so like for example security requirement, or what are the conditions you need to fulfill. For example, it should have certain performance quality, certain quality the certain security related qualities, or so it must incorporate the regulatory related some other requirements. So that is your non-functional requirement. Non-functional requirement basically all about your conditions it must fulfill. For example, we said a security related function, or encryption, or audit trail, or it you may have that's volume it must handle, or a particular performance it must have, right? So functionality will talk mostly about the process, how a particular requirement will be implemented. For example, in terms of the functional requirement, if you say fund transfer, you may want to see a custom allow the customer to select beneficiary, by using the drop down menu. So then the solution should provide the drop down menu that list all the beneficiaries alphabetically, right? So the he or she can select. Then you may say allow the customer to enter the transfer amount. So the solution must have some input box where the customers can enter only the numbers, right? Here we're talking about numbers. Then we will talk about next is basically we say allow the customers to basically confirm the transfer. So there should be a confirmation button which help them. Okay. Then we will talk about the second. We will say allow the customers to see, when you say confirm, then we also want to say allow the customer to transfer it securely. So in that case you may want to send the OTP, right, on one time password. You can use that one, and then allow the customer to allow the system to generate and transfer it, and once it is transferred, this customer should be able to input that one. So you provide the input box, and in case if it is system fails to generate and send it automatically after the customer confirms, then you ask, you can provide the option by the system. They can resend the particular code in, so you can give option one time or two times, right? And then system should also verify that particular code what the customer has entered. So these are the basically what we call is a process you're describing. But then when we talk about it, the data should be transferred in encrypted form. So that is your condition, that is a non-functional requirement. When a customer is transferring the fund from a different IP, so you must the system must ask them additional security questions to verify the authenticity, something like that. For example, if you are transferring every time from India, but if you are traveling tomorrow to US and if you intend to transfer from US, then system may get some suspicious, and then they may ask you to add additional details. So that will help the system to understand, oh, it is you only, but you are traveling, so there is nothing to worry about it, so those are additional requirement you may have to consider. Then you have is a transition requirement. Transition requirement is nothing but basically you the additional requirement what you need to have in order to basically allow the system to interact with other systems or other in the production environment, or maybe if you are putting it online, so there could be different ways. Okay. So there are various ways you may want to basically define those the requirement. When you are building the solution, so you are building in an isolated form, right? Or maybe in the development form, then it is testing in the test environment. Then you are basically talking about the what we call UAT environment. But when you are transferring that into, but all this time that data is simulated, or it is basically there could be some in sending the information to system, getting the verification. But when you actually put it into the user community, then it start interacting with the different solutions, right? So then those interaction or the solution interfaces you may have to build and maybe incorporated that additional requirement. So those are the additional the requirement, that is your transition requirement. Okay. And transition requirement also will include the how to operate the solution, and then what are the things a person has to do. Okay. Question. You have, I'll just read that question. Give me 1 second. It may look like this: business requirement, stakeholder requirement, solution requirement, that is functional, non-functional, and transition requirement. Now, in terms of the business requirement, they are associated with the business goals and objectives at the high level. Stakeholder requirement are mostly the operational related requirement, how it should be operated when the solution is, or when it is implemented. Solution requirement is in terms of when you're building the solution, what are the capabilities and the condition a solution should fulfill in order for that particular requirement, right? And that is functional and non-functional requirement, including the transition requirement. So this is how it will look like. Okay. So I'm just going to stop here and take